Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine. Welcome to Punchline Talks. Today I'm joined by the CEO of GFirst LEP, David Owen. Hi, Dave. Thanks ever so much for joining us today.
Hi, Mark. No problem at all.
Now, you and I have known each other quite some time, and you've been the chief executive of GFirst LEP for quite some time. How long have you been in position?
I've been doing this job just over 12 years now. So, yeah, an awful long time, isn't it?
Well, I've noticed that grey beard you've got there, which is, you're a new Father Christmas look, which is quite nice. Now, can you tell us, please, what is GFirst LEP? There will be some people who don't know about the organisation.
So our role as the LEP, in a sentence, is to grow the Gloucestershire economy, and to do that via supporting businesses, so roll out the Growth Hub service and helping and supporting businesses to grow and reach their potential, but also supporting individuals. So how can we provide the best opportunities for young people in Gloucestershire? How can we encourage more young people here? How can we promote the county of Gloucestershire from a business perspective? So it's all about growing the economy ultimately.
Now, lots of people don't realise, but GFirst LEP also has a big say in some of the big fundamental projects that are going on, from roundabout infrastructure projects. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so over the last, we're just coming to the end of our investment programme, which is overall worth about £500 million in investment in Gloucestershire. It's 115, 120 million pound from the government, another 30 to 40 million pound from the European Union, and then the rest is made up of contribution from businesses themselves and from some of our local councils as well. And it's everything from investment in the Gloucestershire College site in the Forest of Dean in Cinderford, that new site over there. Well, it's not so new now, but fantastic college facility in Forest of Dean, through the hamburger roundabout at the end of the A40, at the Gloucester end of the A40, to the road improvements that allow the cyber park to go ahead in Cheltenham, the fantastic Farm 491 Growth Hub facility in Cirencester, investment in the Five Valleys Shopping Centre in Stroud. So all over the county, investments that we've made, the bus station in Gloucester, or Transport Hub as it's supposed to be known, the work on both Gloucester and Cheltenham railway stations, whole host of projects all over the county that hopefully have driven business forward and had a big impact and made a big difference.
How do you get to that point? How do you get to choose the particular project? Obviously, the hamburger roundabout was quite an easy one. There's such a bad bottleneck, but there's so many other different projects you're involved with. Who decides? Who makes that final decision? Is it a group of you, or?
So the whole principle of local enterprise partnerships is about business-led growth. So our board is made up of 15 members. Majority of them are business people operating in Gloucestershire from a variety of sectors, but also then 2 leaders of local councils, someone representing the voluntary and community sector, and 2 people representing education, further education and higher education. And ultimately they make the decisions on where the funding goes. But to go back, and it seems like absolutely ages ago now, it's back in 2013, I think it was, that we wrote the Strategic Economic Plan, which was the plan for growth for Gloucestershire for the next 6 or 7 years. And that highlighted the projects that we wanted to invest in. So we basically went out to the community of Gloucestershire and said, what would make a real difference to growth? Where are the gaps? Where are the things that we need to be investing in? And most of those projects came through that process. And then over more recent years, we've had top-up funding from government. So the most recent one was something called the Getting Building Fund at the back end of 2020. And that funded projects like the KW Bell Construction Centre in the Forest of Dean, part of Hartbury's Digital Innovation Farm, a brand new £5 million digital skills centre at Cirencester College. And to get those projects, we basically go out to partners all over Gloucestershire and say, what projects have you got? And then our board does an assessment of those projects against the criteria, usually set by government or whoever's providing the funding, prioritise those projects and pitch for as much money as we can possibly get for the county.
What's the project that's really, I don't know, that you could be most proud of?
God, that's a really tough one because there's so many good projects. I think, um, so can I pick more than one?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So I talked about the Gloucestershire College site in Cinderford, in the Forest of Dean, and it's for anyone that hasn't been there, it's an absolutely amazing site. And we know that historically there's been real challenges about aspiration levels in young people in the Forest of Dean. And the whole purpose of that investment from us and from Gloucestershire College themselves was raising those aspiration levels, providing a really good facility for young people actually in the Forest of Dean where they could go and get further education. And so, and I think that's really, really important. Our Growth Hub network is fantastic and it's envied right across the country. So it's one of the top 2 Growth Hub networks in the country alongside Manchester's. And I'm really proud of that because it's helped thousands and thousands of businesses in Gloucestershire. It's helped thousands of individuals to set up businesses in Gloucestershire. And that we know that's really important, supporting small businesses, helping them grow, helping them realize what potential they have and how much they could grow and how much more activity they could do, is really important. So I think probably those 2 combined would be the 2 that I go, those are the real things which were different as well. So that you talked about the hamburger roundabout. Those kind of infrastructure projects are kind of no-brainers. There's a bottleneck. You've got to do something to solve it. You're gonna have to spend a lot of money on it. So let's put a hamburger roundabout in place, as it happened to be in that case. But things like the Growth Hub network, things like building a new college building in the Forest of Dean, or opening up the Berkeley site as well. That South Gloucester and Stroud College done a fantastic job with some funding support from us to open up that site. Those are the sorts of projects that wouldn't normally happen. And I think genuinely we can say they happen because we had an LEP in place, because we had business leadership running that LEP and controlling it.
I don't think a lot of business people in the county actually realise how much of a fingerprint, a thumbprint you guys have got on these infrastructure projects. But also, I don't want to fly your flag too much, mate, but you are actually known throughout the industry as being one of the best LEPs in the country.
Yeah, we are, because we deliver. We deliver. We've got really good partnerships. I think part of it is the fact that we operate on a Gloucestershire level, and we know, from your work with businesses in Gloucestershire, how proud they are of the county and how loyal they feel towards the county. And so it actually means that when we've been out to businesses and said, support us, help us with this piece of work, come and advise us, come and work with us, we've not really had problems getting business people engaged, involved, and interested. And I think sometimes people forget that business people are just people ultimately. So their kids go to school here, their parents live here, they live here, they go shopping here, they go and walk in the countryside here, they love the county. And I think we sometimes some people describe business people as this sort of amorphous beast of strange people who don't actually care. They do care because they live here. So that it's absolutely in their interest that this is the best county possible. And I think that's why we've been successful, because we've had that really good business support.
Now, I just always like to focus on the positive, but what would you say the biggest project that you guys have worked on that haven't kind of panned out as you hoped?
Well, I think some of the projects have been more slow to roll out than I would have liked. So whilst the Growth Hub is one of the things I'm most proud of that we've been able to do, we still haven't got a Cheltenham Growth Hub open. We still haven't got a Forest of Dean Growth Hub open. Forest of Dean Growth Hub will open in April of this year. Cheltenham will open later this year, which is great news. But I would have loved those to have been opened 2 or 3 years ago, so that they could have started delivering for those businesses. So it's disappointing, but it was circumstances, and it was about, in those 2 cases, about finding the right partner that could deliver a really good Growth Hub service. I guess the other thing which we've still got a long way to go on is our skills provision being absolutely matched to the needs of businesses. And our colleges in particular have done a fantastic job at further education level. Our universities have done a great job at higher education level of providing better services for business, but there's still a long way to go before that skills provision is providing the right opportunities for young people.
I'd like to talk to you now about COVID and the impact that it's had on businesses. You and I have talked a lot over the last years. I've talked to Deb a lot over the years. I think, to be fair, I think GFirst LEP have really led the county with the reaction to COVID. I just want to say that, and congratulations to you and the team and the hubs working really hard. 'Cause sometimes I do think, and the county councils the same, by the way, the borough councils, district councils have been fantastic. The amount of work those people have put in behind the scenes. Just like the banks, people forget about the bank. The money's all carried on going. Anyway, it's not about that, but about you guys. What was your first thoughts then when the lockdown happened? It's a year ago, not very long ago. What were you thinking for business?
So, the first thing we did, so we had a team in place that had been looking at the impact of EU exit. Because bearing in mind, you think back to kind of January 2020, the focus wasn't really on COVID. It was on EU exit and what were the implications of that going to be. So we had a team of people through our growth hubs that were looking at that and picking up data from businesses across Gloucestershire and understanding what their concerns were. And when COVID hit, what we were able to do was to switch that from thinking about EU exit to thinking about COVID and its implications. So the first thing we did was say, okay, how do we respond to this as a business? We need to send everybody home. And we did that, I think it was a week before the lockdown was announced on the 23rd of March. We sent everybody home and said...
How many guys work for for you guys?
We got 24 staff in total. So we said to them, right, so a week before that, we said, let's get the systems set up so that we can work from home. So let's get everybody on, actually it was Microsoft Teams at the time we were using. Let's get everybody on Teams. Let's make sure we can use it and people have got it on their laptops and they can work from home. So we did that. Then we said, okay, what can we best offer Gloucestershire? Well, two things really. One, get the information out to businesses as quickly as possible on what support is available. And as you know, if you think back to that time, it seems like ages ago now, doesn't it? There were lots of different support things coming down from government for businesses, all a bit confusing because it was very reactionary. And our job was to interpret that and get the messages out as clearly as we possibly could to businesses in Gloucestershire that there was support available and here was how to get it. And then the second thing for us to do was to talk to businesses in Gloucestershire and understand where the gaps were in support. And so we spent a lot of time talking to individual businesses, surveying businesses, understanding where the gaps were, feeding that back up the government chain to say, look, here's a real gap appearing here. And then we started to see announcements being made by the Chancellor and by others in new support schemes that were coming in that were reacting to the information that we were providing. It wasn't just us doing it, there were 37 other LEPs across the country doing it as well. But that information gathering was really important in setting government policy to protect as many jobs as possible and to support as many businesses as possible. And then it was about, okay, I don't think in March of 2020, all of us thought we'd still be sat on a Zoom call 12 months later, 13 months later. I think we thought this wasn't going to last as long as it has. And of course, it's had a massive impact on some businesses in particular, and a huge impact on lots of individuals. And, we've, I guess the bit of work I'm proudest of over the last 12 months is the awareness raising we've done around mental health and well-being. And the newsletters we put out on mental health and well-being have been the ones that have had the most positive response and the biggest response, where people are saying, actually, it's really good to see that it wasn't just me feeling like that. And it's quite normal to feel down and to not feel great about the situation we all find ourselves in.
I mean, let's be honest, when it first went into lockdown, I was talking to, as you know, I talk to so many different business people on a regular basis, and so many companies could just see their whole livelihoods, everything they've worked for, everything they've dreamed for, suddenly just going down in flames. And, and I really still feel for the hospitality sector. I know they're coming out of it soon, but, and the retail sector, is going to be very different to the way that we see it, which brings me round to talk about difference, the way that we all work in the office. Do you, recently NatWest have said 13,000 people aren't going back. More companies have said they're not going to go back to the office. What's your view on that, Dave? How do you think this is going to pan out?
So I think there are two camps on this. I think there are those people who are absolutely desperate to get back in the office and to have that social interaction, just desperate to do it. And those people are quite noisy people. because they're usually quite extroverted people. So they're listened to a lot. I think there's another camp of people, and I put myself in this camp, who go, actually, I want some of that social interaction, and I recognise that some of what we do needs to be face to face. But working at home really works. I'm more productive. I'm not as interrupted as much. We get much better attendance at meetings and seminars that we're running, because it's easier to dial into a session where you know it's only going to be an hour, when you haven't got to think, oh, I've got to get in the car and drive across the county for half an hour, and I might get stuck in traffic, and then I've got to get back, and then, you know, and all that sort of stuff. So I think we're going to see some kind of blended operation, but I suspect it will be more. People will spend 2, maybe 3 days in the office, and they'll spend 2, maybe 3 days working at home, because actually lots of people can do their work from home. I'm always really conscious when I talk about this, though, that that's fine if you're in a largely office-based environment. There are lots of people who, of course, can't work from home, or don't have homes where they could work from, because they just don't have the right kind of facilities at home to be able to work from home. But I do think that shared office space is going to become even more important. I think people are going to want that interaction, but businesses aren't necessarily going to see the need to be spending lots of money on office accommodation that's there 365 days a year, when people aren't necessarily wanting to use it. So I think we'll see some shifts. And yeah, if you think about the use of technology in the last 12 months, it's come on leaps and bounds, hasn't it? It probably would have taken us 10 years to work through that we could do an interview like this online, which meant that neither you nor I had to travel anywhere. And it would take less time and be recorded, and then potentially more people can see and hear it, rather than us sitting in in a hotel somewhere and inviting guests to come along and listen to us witter on.
No, I mean, you're right, and the technology is just going to get better and better. I mean, I interview so many people, and I'm still surprised at how many people, no disrespect, that still have poor cameras. You know, it might be on a laptop or even like I'm sitting on my top of my PC here. But doesn't that, from what you're saying, then doesn't that put things like the forum and the cyber centre, 120,000 square feet of office space within the forum, something like that, cyber centre, again, these are big infrastructure projects that are going to be built. Do they still have a future? Are they, or am I just being a bit too?
I think they definitely still have a future, and I think they have a future because we've had a huge shortage of really good quality employment space in this county for a long time now. And whilst people will work from home more or work remotely more, and candidly, you could employ someone in Punchline that never lived or came to Gloucestershire potentially. Yeah, they could sit on the end of a phone or on the end of a Zoom screen somewhere and work for you, and still write articles and still do work for you. And that's been the case for a long time, hasn't it? Outsourcing stuff to various countries around the world or various parts of the UK. But I still think that really good quality space, as long as it's flexible, will be needed. People still will need that social interaction. They'll still need that kind of innovation space where getting people in a room and seeing all of their reactions as a person is more positive for innovation activity than being on a Zoom screen and trying to interpret what their body language and what they're saying, and maybe misinterpreting it at times. So I don't fear the Cyber Park or the Forum or any of those, what feel like large scale projects to us as Gloucestershire, don't have a future. They absolutely do. I think it's the very large cities where congestion is much more of a problem, where commuting in and out of them is much more of a challenge. I think it's those areas that have the real challenge, where you might see 30% of your workforce no longer coming into the office every day.
It's a very good answer, actually. And I think you're right there. I'm going to turn to Dave, the guy now, if you don't mind me saying. So, yep. David, you're well known as Brockworth, came from Gloucester anyway. That's you love Gloucestershire. It's well documented. How did you get the job of being CEO of GFirst LEP? How did that come about, please?
So
Bear in mind, we've only got like 8 minutes left.
so I at the time I was director of innovation and enterprise at the University of Gloucestershire, and I'd been doing that for a few years. So my background before that was in higher education, further education, business development. I'd worked at John Moores University in Liverpool. I'd set up a training company in Liverpool as well. I'd worked at Bristol University with some of their lead academics in computer science for a few years. Went to University of Gloucestershire to work through how they could engage with businesses more. This is back in 20 years ago now, nearly. And I've been doing that job for 6 or 7 years. I'd been involved with, as it was then, Gloucestershire First, as a partner of Gloucestershire First. Stan Jones, who was my predecessor, was stepping down as chief executive. I'd already looked at the role and looked at what the organisation did and thought, that's a really interesting potential organisation, really interesting role, sort of thing I'd like to do next. At that time, I didn't know Stan was about to retire. He retired, job came up, I applied for it, and the rest is history, as they say. And so I got the job. And came in with an agenda from the board, which was need to transform the business, need to turn it around, need to restructure it, need to restructure the governance model, need to restructure the team and the business model. And so spent the first sort of 6 to 9 months doing that. And then LEPs came along. Government made the announcements and said, actually, we want business in a leadership role in growing economies, and here's the model, set up a local enterprise partnership. So we bid for that with support, fantastic support from businesses across the county, really good support from our local councils and other partners as well, and then became GFirst Local Enterprise Partnership with the approval of government at that stage.
Sticking to you personally, what book are you reading at the moment? Are you reading any books? Or like me, I read newspapers.
This is, you didn't tell me you were going to ask this question, but I've got it here actually. So the book I'm reading at the moment is this one.
Everything is okay.
By Mark Manson, which is fascinating. So it's the story of effectively of how inside our heads we've got these two brains working. One is our thinking brain and one is our feeling brain. And our feeling brain sadly often outplays our thinking brain. So we don't make rational decisions. So it's very interesting. It's quite deep for a book which has that title. I don't read enough. I decided that at Christmas I just don't read enough. And my partner's a librarian, so that's not really a good position to be in, is it? I don't read enough.
Really.
So I decided actually I was going to have one New Year's resolution. I was going to read more. So I identified 12 books that I was going to read this year, and the order I was going to read them in. Where are we?
Is that your first one?
No. That's book number 7.
Oh, really?
12.
Wow,
So,
that's very impressive. I'm still reading Peter Crouch's autobiography, which I've been reading for like 18 months, but I'm a bit of a reader.
18 months. Well, that was my old style of doing it, but now I've set myself a challenge. I'm ploughing through them because it feels like it's more of a challenge.
During lockdown, have you watched much TV, or has there been a box set that's caught your eye at all? Actually, yeah, this has been really good.
I was really pleased Line of Duty came back on. I love a bit of Line of Duty. Got a little bit addicted to DIY Chateau during lockdown.
I really like that as well, yeah.
I never realised there were so many episodes of it, but did get a bit addicted to that. Decided that I should definitely buy a chateau in France because they're unbelievably cheap. They're cheap for a reason. I did watch the Tiger one. I've forgotten the name of it now, with the crazy people in America with the tiger.
No,
Tiger King. I did watch that. I quite enjoyed that. I've watched all the usual rubbish that everybody's watched.
I haven't really watched that much myself, I'll be honest with you. But I got into Game of Thrones. I did watch the whole series of Game of Thrones, but I was doing that beforehand, and I finished it off during the pandemic. Okay, I've got to go into 3 top tips for business, please. What's your 3 top?
So 3 things. One, think about diversity, because if you get diversity in your business, it's proven that your business will be more successful. You'll think differently, and that'll challenge you, which is a great thing. Second, think about digital. So the businesses that have been successful in the last 12 months have done okay. We're probably already on that digital journey of thinking about how they can provide their service or their products without face-to-face interaction. And that's even more important now. And the third thing I would say is think about net zero, think about climate change, because it's going to hit businesses. It's going to hit businesses quick. Probably later this year, government will make announcements about what that journey is to net zero. So think about the small steps that you can start to take as a business to reduce your impact on the climate.
David Owen from GFirst LEP. Thanks ever so much for joining us today on Punchline Talks. See you soon, Dave.
Thanks,
Thank
Mark.
you.